Good day everyone, especially to you Ma'am Ador. I am Janjan PBTO from C8 200 Section B, and today I will be able to report the Module 1 of Institutional Based Correction. Let's start. Institutional Based Correction. Institutional Based Correction is the individual placed in a prison or jail, which means they are housed in a secure correctional facility. So, institutional based correction is this where the the place for the prison of or a jail, which the people who are accused or doing such criminal is housed in a correctional facility. The future of corrections will be affected by everything from the national economy and current public opinion to drug-related crime in the aging of prison populations. So um, the population of the prison is is um, related to the drug or doing crimes, and such everything who is doing the against the law, or such bad thing doing such bad things. So they are the related to the populations of the prisoners. Prison management system. Prison management system will address the problems and improve the performance of the management, specifically in records management. So prison management is it will address or uh, to locate the problems and also to improve the performance of the management. The main objective of the study is to design and develop an information system that will help to organize the records of prisoners. So the objectives of the prison management system is to study and design and also to develop the information system that will able to help to organize the records of the prisoners. Prison management system will help future searches in their study and will be able to get information will serve as a guide in order to enhance their project. And prison management system is help also for the researchers for their study, and through this they will get information to guide their project. Penology. Penology is the study of punishment for crime or criminal offenders. It includes the study of control and prevention of crime through punishment of criminal offenders. So the meaning of the penology is the study of punishment for crime of criminal offenders. The term penology is derived from the Latin word poena, which means pain or suffering. Prison. Prison is also known as a jail or gaol, in which inmates are confined against their will and usually denied a variety of freedoms under the authority of the state as punishments for various crimes. So the prison is also known as jail or gaol, where the inmates are confined to their confined because of their will. Um, and a prison can be also described as building in which people are legally held as a punishment for crime they have committed. So the prison is also which people who are doing the prison. This were their punishment of what they have committed. Prison management. Prison management models strictly private inmates from assisting which prisons administration or governance. Prison management is where they were assisting the prison administration or the governance. In order for a prison system to be managed in a fair and humane manner, National legislation, policies, and practices must be guided by the international standards developed to protect the human rights of prisoners. So, in order to the prisoners be managed, uh, they must be practiced. The policies must and the national legislation and policies and practice must be guided by the international standards developed enabled to them to protect the human rights of prisoners. Prison authorities have a responsibility to ensure that the supervision and treatment of prisoners is in line with the rule of law with respect to individuals' human rights. So, the prisoners have the authorities and also have the responsibility. The authorities have the responsibility to ensure um, the prisoners have in line with their law, and also they have respect the individual with their human rights. Imprisonment and poverty. So imprisonment and disproportionately affect individual and families living in poverty. When an income generating member of the family is in prison, the rest of the family must adjust to their loss of income. The impact can be especially severe in a poor developing countries, which the state does not provide financial assistance to the indigenous, where it is not unusual for one breath when you're due when Shelley support an extended family network. So the imprisonment in poverty, it is very affected to the individual, especially if the person uh, if the uh, person who is uh, who is working to the family and able for them to feed or to living, if they are the one who is uh, go to jails, they can the families are so very they don't have any food, or they have don't any income because their family, because one of their family have in prison, and it and they will adjust what they should do in able for them to survive. Human rights consideration. A sentence of imprisonment constitutes only deprivation of the basic right to liberty. It does not entail the restriction of other human rights, with the exception of those which are naturally restricted by the fact of being in prison. So, the human rights considerations, the restriction of human rights, with uh, exception of which naturally restricted by fact of being a prison. Prison reform is necessarily to ensure that its principle is respected the human rights of prisoners, protected in their prospects for social integration, peace, and compliance with relevant standards and norms. So the prison is to, to ensure that the principle is being respected with the human rights, and also the will be protected by the authorities of the prisoners. 5 important facts about incarceration system in the Philippines. First is severe overcrowding. So the individual cells hold up to twice or even these times their capacity, forcing prisoners to sleep virtually piled up on one another. At police station, those suspected of drug-related crimes are crammed into a few square meters for a long periods of awaiting trial. So the severe overcrowding is very common, especially to those cells who is a lot of individuals of prisons, and if they are sleeping, they are piled up on another, and also in the police stations, the suspected drug related crime is they are waiting for a long periods of trial. So they are uh, they are they're together with other crimes related. So it causes a severe overcrowding. In many prison, detainees do not have the minimum space requirements recommended by international standards, and in some cases spending up to 23 hours of the day, if not all day, in overcrowded cells. So, so many of the prison detainees do not have the minimum space because of what we call the severe overcrowding, and it is it is never change because it will never change because it is recommended by the international standards. So the cells are standards. So that's why if there's a lot of prisoners, they are uh, they are they are all overcrowded. Pre-trial detainees it is someone who in connection with an alleged offenses has been deprived of their liberty following a judicial or other legal process but not yet definitely sentenced. The pre-trial detainees is connection with the alleged offense which can be the legal process is not yet already is not yet definitely sentenced. So that's we call pre-trial detainees. And also, the pre-trial detainees is it seeks to ensure an effective investigation of crime and is thus a legitimate interest of a state governed by the rule of law. So it it will ensure that the investigation of crime will get interest and also governed by the law. Pre-trial detention under means the chance of a fair trial and presumption of innocence. So the pre-trial detention is uh, is is um, their presumption of the innocence, and their undermines the chance of a fair of trial. High death rolls. Suicide was the leading cause of death for local jail inmates in the United States in 2018, accounting for 335 deaths in that year. So, high death rolls is those who are committing suicide in in a jail inmates, and heart disease like killed a further 290 inmates in that same year, making the second leading cause of death. So the heart the inmates who are killed are cause of their heart disease. Uh, Next is according to Ernesto Tamayo, the hospital medical chief, these deaths are due to overcrowding, dirty living condition, and inmates violence. So according to the Ernesto Tamayo, uh, the because of uh, the effect of high death rolls is to the hospitals is because of the due to overcrowding and also dirty living in the cells and the conditions of the inmates and also to the violence. That's why there are a lot of inmates have high death rolls. So vigilance justice. Duterte was war on drugs um, escalated during his presidency. Jobless citizens were recruited to kill anyone suspected of dealing, buying, or using drugs. This was one of few ways of some people to make money. Many homeless and impoverished people joined the vigilante teams. So vigilante justice is those who are killed or suspected of dealing or buying of using drugs. This uh, due to the people enable to them to make money to and to have their a lot of money and easy money. this uh, that's why because of the 30 against the drugs. So So many people or vigilant people were killed because of these cases. The Philippines war on drugs has created the belief that extrajudicial violence and murder are necessary to fight crime. Corruption. It is a form of dishonesty or a criminal offense which is undertaken by a person or an organization which is entrusted with a position of authority in order to acquire illicit benefits or abuse power for one's personal gain. So, so the corruption in meaning, it is a form of dishonesty or criminal offense. Corruption may involve any activities and practices which are legal in many countries. So there are a lot of so it stated this there uh, that corruption is an activities that and practice which are legal. In example, in our country, there are a lot of corruption that are sit in their position in the government. That's why our nation will never improve, and a lot of people are getting poor, and 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 a lot of people do not have their income or less income because of the corrupt of our government. Probation. Probation is a privilege granted by the court to a person convicted of a criminal offense to remain in the community instead of actually going to prison or jail. So probation is the court granted to the person convicted of criminal offense. The term probation applies only to community sentence, such as suspended sentences. So probation is only for the community for the community sentence to those who is suspended of sentence. An offender on probation is ordered to follow certain conditions set forth by the court, often under the supervision of probation officers. The cause of imprisonment. So, the cause of imprisonment account needs to be taken not only for actual funds spent on the upkeep of each prisoner, which is usually significantly higher than what is spent on a prison sentence on non-custodial sanction, but also of indirect costs such as social, economic, and healthcare related costs, which are difficult to measure but which are long-term. So it means that the cost of imprisonment is it needs an account to be taken for the actual funds and to spend for the each prisoners which is which sentence which is spent on their prison sentence. Detrimental social impact. So the imprisonment disrupts relationships and weakens social cohesion, since the maintenance of such cohesion is based on long-term relationships. When a member of family is imposed, the disruption of the family structure affects relationships between spouses as well as between parents and children, reshaping the family and community across generations. Mass imprisonment produces a deep social transformation in families and communities. So it means that when a member of a family is imprisoned, it affects the relationship between their family, especially to the spouses and the parents and children, because it will shaping the family to their generations. Healthcare. Prison health services are extremely inadequate. Prison health services are almost always severely underfunded and understaffed, and sometimes non-existent. So, prison health services is uh, it take uh, to the health to the prison health service that is always understaffed and sometimes non-existent. Uh, most of the time under the responsibility of the authority in charge of the prison's administration. Prison health services work in complete isolation from health authorities. So that's why in a prison, in a jail, there are they are they have the isolation, or to enable them to have they have isolation from health authorities, enable to the inmates be healthy, and especially to their health if there's something wrong with their health, and if, so that uh, uh, their inmates will uh, not spreading the illness, and enable them to save. Public health consequences of imprisonment. Prisons have very serious health implications. Prisoners are likely to have existing health problems on entry to prison, as they are predominantly from poorly educated and socio-economically deprived sectors of the general population with minimal access to adequate health services. Their health conditions differ in prisons which are overcrowded, where nutrition is poor, sanitation inadequate, and access to fresh air and exercise often unavailable. So, the health and condition of the prisoners is really different because of very overcrowded place of jail, where their nutrition is very poor, and also they can they, they can access the fresh air, and they can also exercise. They can exercise freely because of overcrowded places, and so very heat, and that's why uh, their nutrition and their health is very poor. Social reintegration. In the criminal justice system, reintegration refers to the process of reentry into society by people that have been in prison. Reintegration includes the reinstatement of freedoms not previously had by individuals as a result of being in prison. Social reintegration initiatives should start as early possible within the criminal justice process in order to have maximum effect. So social reintegration it refers to the process of reentry to the society by people have in the prison. Types of prisons. Prisoners are distributed among a variety of types of institutions. Most countries operate national prison systems that are supplemented by state or provincial counterparts. Prisoners who have been charged with minor offenses or who are serving short sentences are more commonly held in municipal jails. So, in these types of prisons, the prisoners are distributed in any types of variety of institutions, and if if the prisoners have been charged with a minor offense, they are only held in their municipal jails. State prisons. Prisons are state or federal housing facilities that confine convicted felons with sentences typically longer than a year. State prisons house offenders who have committed state crimes such as assault, robbery, or homicide. Each state has its own unique legislation regarding the prison system, and differences from state to state can be vast. So the state prisons is where to those who committed crimes such as assault, robbery, or homicides. They were they they were uh, they have their own legislation. They are separating from other inmates because their crimes is uh, they their the crimes is or the sentence is longer than a year. Federal prisons. A federal prison is operated under the jurisdiction of a federal government as opposed to the state of provincial body. Inmates held in federal prisons have been charged with federal crimes such as drug trafficking, identity theft, tax fraud, or child pornography. federal prisons can believe designed to meet needs of its inmates. So the federal prison uh, is under operated of jurisdiction of a federal government. Uh, those who are this includes those who uh, those who is doing the federal prisons is those who are doing such crimes like drug trafficking, identity thief, or tax fraud, or child pornography. Psychiatric prisons. Prison psychiatrics care for the mental health needs of inmates in state and federal correctional systems and even some local jails. As with any prison that pursues methods of rehabilitation, psychiatric prisons are intended to try and help people as opposed to just confining them means of punishment. So this psychiatric prison is those who people have mental illness or disability, or have the mental uh, not proper functioning of the mental health, uh, or they are uh, they are confined or uh, rehabilitate in a jail, or enable to them to help and to help people to back to their uh, good uh, good mind, and also to get proper functioning of their brain. Military prisons. Hulog. Military prisons is a prison operated by a military. Military prisons are used various to house prisoners of war, unlawful combatants, those whose freedom is deemed as a national security risk by the military or national authorities, and members of the military found guilty or a serious crime. So this military prison is operated by the military, and this the prisoners are if uh, they are have the people who are they arresting those people who are uh, found guilty of a serious crime. They are arresting it and put this in their prisoners house. Religion's role in prison. Religion's value in prison is often about each individual growth of development of a particular inmate, and the focus is the perceived role of religion is in helping lower the chances of recidivism and inmates. Other reasons in focus is the immediate value that religion have for inmates through their help in their coping and survival. So religion's role in prison is this where the individual have development of the individual group growth of development of particular inmates. So it will focus to the role of religion, and also it will help to their chances of recidivism among inmates. It will help to their self also, and the reason is why they focus on the religion, because it helped them for survive or to the sentence must be shorter, and they can uh, they serve a short sentence. Minimum security. The prison, sometimes called federal prisons, compasses, or what we call FPCs, have the lowest security in our use. Uh, only has non-violent offenders with a relatively clean record. Something resemble college campuses more than persons, since they are little to no perimeter fencing, and prisoners are housed in dorm style units. Uh, Federal prisons compasses is type is typically offer work programs and classes to Hamlet inmates who are sometimes allowed to work or site. So these are called the prisons are also called a federal prison campuses. To they are used only non-violent offenses uh, to to clean the record sometimes or something. Low security. Low security facility still have a strong orientation towards inmate programs, but they also have to perimeter fencing in a higher staff to inmate ratio than F, FPCs. Some of these prisoners may have a story of violence, but they must have less than 20 years left on their sentence to be placed in a low security facility. So the low security is still also have the strong orientation to the inmates, but they are also they have also fencing to inmates the um, um, fencing the higher staff to inmate ratio, and the low securities prisoners have the story of violence, but they must have 20 years in the sentence to place in low security facility. Medium security federal correctional institutions folk are much more likely to have violent offenders as inmates. This is the security level that moves to cell-based housing, more rigorous treatment programs, and perimeter fencing that often includes razor wire with electric detention system. So medium medium security is have also the correctional institutions uh, is is much look or more likely have violent offenders in a medium security. Administrative. The special class of prison encompasses other types of institutions designed to house inmates with special consideration, such as those who are chronically ill, extremely dangerous, or high escape risk. So the administrative is those that the special class of prison which the institutions designed to house in inmates with special considerations, such those who have chronically ill or high escape risk. Private correction institutions. Sometimes more prison capacity is needed than with the government can offer. In these cases, local, state, and federal government will contract with a private for-profit firm to operate prison on their behalf. So, a private institutions is the person is have capacity to needed to their government offer, and that's all. And juvenile, an individual under the age of 18 is considered as juvenile. Anyone who is not legal age is never locked up in general prison. Adults, they are instead placed in facility that is designed exclusively for juveniles. So the juvenile is to those what we call the underage, the age of 18 is considered as juvenile. So if you if the criminals are doing the criminals is underage, they are confining or they're confining to the facility, like for example the SWD, they are the one who facilitate the prison or a minor. Pudular jails. Pudular jails, also sometimes referred to as direct supervision jail, is different from the jails that have rows of cells. In pudular jails, the inmates are housed in units or pods that are built around a common center space. This allows for more consistent and direct supervision of the inmates for the sake of keeping negative behavior at bay. This isn't the type of incarceration that would be used for dangerous criminals because there's too much interaction with other inmates, which could lead to problems. So the pudular jails is a jail that is different from the jails that we seen in like the cells. The Pudular jails is Pudular jails is it is very hard, or it is hard cell, what is a room for the inmates that uh, to for to the prisoners is uh, separate because the because it the Pudular jails is made to the prison to the criminals for enable to them to avoid the too much problem, because some of the criminals have interaction with the inmates, that's because dangerous to them. Supermax facilities. Supermax prison is a facility within a maximum security prison. This is where the most dangerous and hardened criminals are kept, and it's also where the inmates who have trouble being controlled are kept. The main goal of Supermax facility is to keep everyone, including the inmates, prison staff, and public. This is where inmates will be sent if they have shown violent behavior or against the staff member of another crime inmate. So the Supermax facilities uh, is made for the dangerous and hardened criminals, and able to keep them inmates to trouble being controlled, and also keep ankle uh, bracelets for home detention. Ankle bracelets are used to ensure the individual space at home or within certain areas such as work, school. The criminal justice system has issues with things like overcrowding and the highest cost of keeping a person in jail, which is why an ankle bracelet is great alternative for some criminals. So the ankle bracelet is usually used for, especially to those law enforcement or the police is arresting to the prisons, especially into the home detention. They are use ankle bracelet for the prison are to the person who's committing crime. They use ankle bracelets. Highway houses. A highway house is home for people who would otherwise be in either jail or prison. Halfway houses may be run either locally by the state or federally. Prisons who are either serving an alternative type of sentence or who have been released into the halfway house from jail can be found here. So highway houses is is just like a home for people who would otherwise like jail. The jail is like a home, and especially like some in our country, like Dilima is under uh, uh, is prison under houses, like that's like the she prison of their house. So that's because other example of the house prison. Religion. Detainees in prison have the right of freedom of religion. This should be no discrimination based on religion, and detainees equally have the right not to subscribe to a religion. Prison authorities should meaning ensure that it is nice adhering to a religion can take part in private collective prayer, have visits from religious representatives, and have possession of religious objectives, signs, and materials. Detainees should have the possibility of observing the requirements of the religion, example relating to food, clothing, hygiene, and grooming. So the religion is in the detainees. The religion is they have freedom of the religion of what they are choose, and also they have if the religion is based, they should know discrimination, and also they are equally have right to they have the right to choose their own religion and what we believe. All recognized religions. The right to religion in prisoners applies to all the nice religious. It should not be restricted to the main religious in the country. It should not be the role of prison authorities to decide what is the religion and what is not. This will normally be decided by the competent state authorities national court. So all religions are all recognized. So the person have the right to choose the religion, and also this is decided by the state authorities. Non-discrimination. Prison staff should not discriminate against persons because of the religion or religious belief, and for religions should be treated equally. In no circumstances should staff make derogatory comments about the person's religious belief or practices. Person staff should respect detainees' religious because belief of objects and practices. So the person should not discriminate if they have not the same religion. They are instead of discrimination they are instead of discrimination of their own belief, they are treated one another treated equally, each one of them. Religious objects and materials. Detainees should be allowed to keep in their possession religious books and religious objects. Respect should be shown for all religious objects. In some presence, there are problems of disappearance of damage to religious objects or staff behavior that demonstrates contempt towards them. So, detainees should be allowed to their religious books and religious objects. They should respect what they believe, and also they respect their inmates or what they are what their faith or what they are believing for. Right to have religion. Detainees also have the right not to adhere any religion. The detainees should not be required to produce a religion or belief, to attend religious services or meeting, to take part in religious practices, or to accept a visit from our present active of any religion. Detainees who do not have a religion should not suffer any disadvantage because of this. So, the right to have a religion is in the detainees. They should not be required to force those to the detainees have do not religion. So it is not the disadvantage to them. So it they if the detainees do not have the religion, so they and do not attend to the meetings. So just respect what they are believing for. They are also a human. The correctional system. So in the 1980s, institutions for the confinement of convicts in the attention of those awaiting trial includes a variety of national prisons and penal farms, as well as numerous small local jails and lockups. The prison system at the national level was supervised by the Bureau of Prisoners and also the Department of Justice. The Bureau was responsible for the safe keeping of prisoners in their rehabilitation through general moral education and technical training in industry and agriculture. And then in 1991, the newly formed Philippine National Police took over the administration of local jails. The nation's largest prison was the National Penitentiary in Muntinlupa, Rizal province near Manila, which also operated by Manila Jail City or Manila City Jail. The criminal justice system and its component. The criminal justice system of the Philippines is essentially a system or process in the community by which crimes are investigated. The person suspected for an offense therefore are taken into custody, educated in court, and punished and found guilty of the crime committed. So if the person suspected or committed crime, they are undertaken to the custody to to the custody in the court, and to punish what to punish if the it is found guilty or innocent. Provisions are made for treatment and rehabilitation and reprobation purposes. So, criminal justice system is have also the facilities of rehabilitation and treatment for the reprobation of purposes. So the systems have five distinct but coordinated components. So these are the law enforcement, prosecution, court, correction, community. So these are also called the five pillars of correction of constitutional uh, five criminal justice system. The five pillars. Uh, First is law enforcement. Its function is to conduct investigation on alleged crime committed by a person, to arrest or detain violator of the penal law or ordinance, to effect the warrant issued by the court, and to assist the complainant to fix a case. So law enforcement or what the police is their function is to conduct investigation of of this crime committed by the person, and also they are arrest or detain the violation of penal law. Prosecution, its function is to evaluate the finding the police admitted to their office in to conduct preliminary investigation, to receive the complaint filed by the victim, and to responsible to file information to the court, and to act as legal to scatter of the offended party. So the function of prosecution is to evaluate or to find of the finding of the police admitted to the office. So they are proceeded to they find it is stated if the person committed crime is uh, found guilty, is proceeded to the court. If it not, it will if the person committed crime, if found not guilty, it will it will the it will the uh, crime is uh, the crime is not proceeded to the court. Its function is to conduct cross-examination of the witness before the issuance of the warrant of arrest or such warrant, to conduct arraignment, and to hold trial before giving the final decision of the case. So in the function of the court is to conduct the examination, and also to in court they are also the witness, the victims, and the person committed and the accused person. So it is found that they are so they are conducting arraignment to hold the trial before they have the decision the court before before the decision of the final case. Correction is considered as the weakest component of the criminal justice system. Its function is to reform the convicted offender through the rehabilitation program inside the correction. The function of correction in our criminal justice system is to reform the offender through rehabilitation program, in such giving an opportunity to every convicted offender to continuous study by the way of vocational training program. So the correction is the function of this is to reform or the offender through the rehabilitation program, and just giving opportunity to to work and in a vocational training program, enable to them to help their to help the offenders to study and also to learn more about their skills. Community justice aims to restore victims and repair communities affected by crime. It is intended to promote goodness or improve human quality of life and community well-being. Correctional system. It refers to a network of agencies that functions related to rehabilitated convicted persons through their later institutional based or community based correction. So in correctional system, it is refers to agencies of network that functions related to rehabilitated convicted persons. Corrections. It is also named a field of academic study concerned with the theories, policies, and programs pertaining the practice of corrections. So, it is also the name of correction is a field of academic study and concerned with the theories. It is branch of administration of criminal justice system responsible for correctional and rehabilitation for those persons who, after observation of due, was found to have violated penal law by competent judicial authority. And also, it charged with the responsibility for the acoustic supervision and rehabilitation of those who judicially found violated criminal law. Two approaches of correction. First is institutional correction. Rehabilitation or correctional program take place inside correctional facilities or institutions such as national penitentiaries and jails. So the institutional correction is it has the rehabilitation or correctional programs inside the correctional facilities, while the non-institutional correction is the rehabilitation or correctional programs take place with the community. This approach, no to convict, will not be replaced or released from correctional jail or jail facility. A global view on prison administration. Every person in the world is a place of repentance, just like the National Penitentiary of the Philippines, now known as the New Bilibid Prison. As per Senior Armando F. Grata in his study, Transcending Humanity in the New Bilibid Prisons, Throne and Prison Spirituality, a phenomenological study, is stated that up when intensity is a place where those who violated the social perceptions of conduct of society are made to atone for their acts, commonly described from the institutional point of view as crime. Prisons may be viewed in two ways, according to Brandem 1996. So the Auburn model, which is punishing criminals, otherwise known as the retributive justice. So what we Auburn model is known as retributive justice. This model provides tiny individual self and workshop as well as rigid system of silence and harsh punishments. In 1860s, it led to any prison model and regime designed to keep convicts separate and unable to communicate with each other, even as they were forced to labor as penal slaves. Eastern State model, which is about having people in controlled setting and using a space in human way, otherwise known as the restorative approach. So the Eastern State model is about to people controlled setting in controlled space in human weight according to their weight. And Eastern model state believes that crime is a result of environment in the solitude will make the animal regretful, will make the penitentiary. This would not only punish but move the criminal toward spiritual reflection and change. The restorative justice. It is a way of thinking about what is best for the many connection among the crime victim. There is a offender criminal justice process. Restorative justice is the way of thinking of the many corrections among the crime victim. Restorative justice, at least in principle, in 6 ways for victims and offenders to cooperate in preventing future crime and repairing past harms, according to Sheridan and Strong in 2007. Rehabilitation is used in understood from the Christian of pros to prison, a rehabilitation program. It is used for prayer and spiritual transformation, so that the prisoners who have been released will not have the tendency to be brought back again. So, the second prisons, antiquity to modernity. The history of The reasons could be as old as the human history. The need man to come up with the exacting placement has caused the evolution of reasons. Accordingly, miniature is control and cost scholars include imprisonment among the number of penalties recognized in Hebrew legislation. It is believed that during of the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of New Babylonian Empire, that were at least persons in Jerusalem. There were the three persons in Jerusalem, what we call the Greek city of Athens, Rome, and today's prisons. And the Greek city of Athens. What about this period? In the Greek city of Athens, imprisonment was imposed as a penalty. In fact, prisoners were deprived of freedom of movement by having their feet attached to wooden blocks. In Rome, prisoners were enclosed in a upper chamber lighted only by narrow loopholes, and if they were condemned to death, they were thrown into the dungeons through an opening in roof of strangulation. So in Rome, the punishment is they are thrown into the dungeon through an opening rope strangulation. In prison today, prisons then to be the punishment places where offenders either suffer the sentence for life or suspected specific period of time. It is depending on the gravity of their offense. So the prisons today is it is dependent it is dependent depend to their punishment where the sentence is if their sentence is depending on if their offense is hard or light. In this present, particularly in the Philippines, that the idea is similar to the life imprisonment as differentiate from the concept of reclusion perpetua under revised penal code of the Philippines as penalty that imposed as jail term for 40 years, although life forms are still imposed under specific law. Third, the influence of the Roman Catholic Church. It was a response to the imprisonment of Christians because of their faith. Thus, it was natural that when Christians, because they were being hunted down and cast into jail for their faith, the church should recommend the faithful to visit the prisoners. However, the church was more considerate with private debtors, especially if it is sees that the creditors are abusive of their rights. Pro-life Pope John Paul II. This disdain of the church has become a complete reversal of their past. It was the present pro-life Pope John Paul II who reversed this culture of death. In Evangelio Vitae, Pope John Paul II has challenged each and every one of us to break away from the culture of death, specifically in the treatment of killing as solution to problems. The death penalty, euthanasia, or killing of elderly, the handicapped in the guise of mercy killing or dying with dignity. Galley slavery. From about the middle of the 19th century and the beginning of the 19th century, galley slavery was imposed of measurement, although this practice existed long ago in ancient Rome and Greece. Convicted criminals were chained and marched to the ships where they stayed to, or the ships for the duration of their sentence, but in many cases their punishment is for life. But the year 1350, thieves were also branded so that if they happened to escape, they would be easily detected and they're gonna change. So galley slavery. So galley means it is a kind of a ship, and slavery is to the person who is convicted. So the convicted person is in the ship. So they are to their duration of sentence is punishment for life or longer life. They serve it for long life. The use of imprisonment as punishment for an increasing number of crimes began on the 14th, and the interest in those persons were first established in the English local codes of the year 1890. The reason is not because man is becoming more civilized, but rather that peasants were beginning to be seen as were criminals that could be exploited for profits. During these times, laws were passed making illegal for agriculture workers to change employment. Another law mandated that workers in the agriculture, emailing, puncturing industries cannot accept which is higher than those obtained in the middle of the 14th century, otherwise they will be imposed. So these laws were enacted to protect the interests of landlords and capitalists and guaranteed them enough profits at the expense of course of the agricultural and industrial workers. Gauls, or what we call jails. At those times, the jails are known as the Gauls, from which the day present day world was deprived its name were hard for prisoners but not for those who were wealthy. This was because they theirs have to pay for their accommodation, food, and post of administration and security. Walnut Street Prison behind Old Gaol. What has been called the first American penitentiary is not the first one of the world. Was established in Philadelphia in 1970 in the Walnut Street in jail 1970 in the Walnut Street jail, a building formerly operated as a city jail. So the Walnut Street jail is originally from the Philadelphia, and it is first established in the 1970. So the cell blocks consolidated in the Walnut Street jail, pursuant to the law of 1970, introduced in permanent fashion pattern of outside cells within central corridor, the chief of architectural feature of the Pennsylvania system of prison construction. By the 16th to the 18th centuries, flogging, branded mutilation continued practice of the more common forms of punishment. Mutilation was tried to crime committed. The hands of leaves were cut off so that they could not steal again, and also serve as the reminder to others for them to committing crimes. So the punishment of them is if the committing crimes of these centuries, their hands were cutting off, to deter that this accused person is committing a crimes. So liars had their tongue cut. So those who are liars, had liars had to cut their tongue. If the public hates of the defenders, they would even to thinking eggs or meat, garbage, or even did or the offender. So if the public hates to the defenders, they would even throw the eggs or meat, garbage, even the dead animals to the offender. King Henry VIII. So Henry King is normally depicted in the storybooks as large man into the dress, sporting a bird. So King Henry is a large man and dressing a sporting bird. So King Henry first wife was the widow of his brother Arthur, his old brother in the fact, who died at the young age of 15. This helped seal the alliance between England and the span of Catherine at Aragon was the daughter of King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella of Castile, and a man who was just reminded and willing to see the death of her own wife. So King Henry is the eighth. King Henry VIII is the man who just willing to see the death of his own wife. Edward VI, a jewel of King Henry VIII. Henry VI was crowned at the age of 9 with no maturity to lead his king from the front of Regency Council was set up at his rule. So Henry VI is crowned at the young age of 9 with no maturity mind and to lead this kingdom. It was during Edward's rule that Protestantism acquired a biggest hold over Catholicism in England. Edward recognized his cousin Lady Jane Grey as an heir to throne, which was not accepted by the private council and declared many in Catholic half-sister and wear and crown. Henry broke up with his wives, and he also secured his second wife under the adultery for the reason that she did not bear him a son. So Edward broke his wife because the reason of he did not bear him a son. So that's why he cheated or it the case of it is under the adultery. Bride's will system. Under the bride's will system, vagrants and prostitutes were given work while serving their sentence. So and for all practical intents and purpose, only the capitalized class and exploit the prison labor. The bride will system turned out to be very effectively workable and profitable, so that 20 years after it was first established, the English Parliament all countries to establish this kind of prison. In 16th and 17th century, significant reformative reforms were made, spurred on by colonies. England's insatiable appetite for workers to man its growing industrial capacity, but by the end of 17th century, England had abandoned its penal reform action due to increasing seriousness of the crime problem, both brought on by the massive influx of people from the rural areas, and the Bridewell soon became inoperative, and they theorized that conditions there will have become no different from the condition of the other country jails. Prisons are a conventionally institution which form part of our criminal justice system. Incarceration of suspects offender is a legal penalty that may possibly be imposed by the statute for the violation of our penal law. The term jail is considered as synonymous with prison, although legally speaking, these are often distinct institutions. Typically, jails are intended to hold persons awaiting trial or serving sentence less than 3 years, while the Bureau of Corrections house persons are serving longer penalties. Conclusions. In primitive times, the form of punishment was so barbaric or ruthless, and there was no other form of energy except death, drowning, or being thrown into the jungle, which are infested by wild animals. But in the modern trend of corrections, of this form of punishment is only being things apart. So, and in the primitive times of punishment, it is very barbaric or very ruthless. In their forms of punishment, the death is drowning in the being and also being thrown to the jungle, which where the animals are eating them. But in our modern trend of corrections today, the form of punishment is only a thing of the past. Penal management. Penal management is refers to the manner of or practice of managing or controlling places confining in a jail or prison, while penal administration is a program that prepare individual to plan and manage institutional facilities and program for housing and rehabilitating prisoner in public or private sector. So the penal management is refers to the manner of practice of the or managing the places of confinement in a jail or prison. So punishment. The punishment is the redress that the state takes against an offending member of society that usually involved in pain and suffering. The penalty imposed on an offender for crime or wrongdoing. So punishment as the set of imposition of any type of sanction of an individual part of an act when as violated criminal law. So the punishment is kind of act that is a kind of penalty that is imposed to the offender who is doing a crime or wrongdoing. So, jails are primarily adult penalty stations used for the detection of law violators. Its original function was to house pre-trial detainees or to serve a place for detention or of accused person charged with having to committed crimes. So the jail is defined as a place of confinement for inmates under investigation or undergoing trial or serving serving term sentence. Dual rule in jail. As a place of detention for those awaiting final disposition of criminal action. For the service, a short sentence or not more than 6 months for those categorized as city jail or municipal prisoners. And B is not more than 3 years or with a confinement or not more than 1,000 pesos for those categorized as provincial prisoners. These are the types of jail. Jail is a security facility common to police stations used temporary confinement of individual for investigation. The ordinary jails is the type of jail commonly used to detain a convicted criminal offender to serve sentence less than 3 years. And the workhouse jail farms or camp, a facility that houses minimum custody open those who are serving short sentences or those who are undergoing constructive work programs. Classification of prisoners under PD 29. So the city of or municipal prisoners, persons who by reason of their sentence may be deprived of liberty for more than 6 years. And the imposition of subsidiary imprisonment shall not be taken into consideration in fixing the status of the sinner hereunder except when the sentence imposes a fine only. So the city or municipal prisoners is deprived for only for more than 6 months. Provincial prisoners, persons who by reason for the sentence may be deprived of liberty for not more than 3 years or are subjected to a fine not more than 1,000 pesos or both. But if the prisons and arrest receive 2 or more sentences in the aggregate exceeding the period of 3 years he shall not be taken into consideration shall prison. The imposition of subsidiary shall not be taken into consideration in fixing the status of prisoners hereunder except when sentence imposed in fine only. So the provincial prisoners is deprived for not more than 3 years and also it fine not more than 1,000 pesos or both. All other prisoners are considered not national prisoners. So there are 3 types of detainees. These are those undergoing investigation or to lock up, or they are prison but they are undergoing investigation. Second is awaiting or undergoing trial, or is we call hearing. The awaiting final judgments or what we call the decision. Bilibid Prison. In 1847, Bilibid Prison was constructed, the central place of confinement for Filipino prisoners. The constructed in radial spokes made of strong adobe stones so sturdy, used as Manila jail, famous as what we call My Haligi Estate. Correctional Institution for Women or CIW is established in 1931 under Act 3579. It is 18 hectares in Mandaluyong. Female prisoners are originally confined in the Bilibid prison. A position for female superintendent was created in 1934. The only penal is seen for female prisoners location courses to making, beauty parlor, handicraft, cloth weaving, and slipper making. Correctional centers are rehabilitation centers for the youth. So the offenders whose ages ranges 9 to 18 years of age to be committed to care of the SWD. So this is where the offenders is minors below 18 years old. Drug addicts rehabilitation centers. These centers has been established for the treatment of drug dependence. The assisting treatment as the rehabilitation center is operated and maintained by the NBI. Important theories in correction. First is classical theory. This is the punishment they deserve to be in prison. The neo-classical theory is the exemption and consideration minors and insane. The positivist theory is reformation and rehabilitation sick patient. The eclectic theory is a combination of beneficial aspects. penalties as a gravity. Gravity is a sentence or how long the sentence is. The reclusion perpetua is 20 years and 1 day to 40 years. The reclusion tempora is 12 years and 1 day to 20 years. Prison mayor is 6 years and 1 day to 12 years. Prison correctional is 6 months and 1 day to 6 years. Arresto mayor is 1 month and 1 day to 6 months. Arresto minor is 1 day to 30 days. Historical perspective. In the 13th century, a criminal could avoid punishment by claiming refuge in a church for a period of 40 days at the end of each time he has compelled to leave the realm by a road or path assigned to him. In the 16th century, transportation of criminals in England was authorized at the end of the century. Russia and other European countries followed system and partially relieved overcrowding of prisons. In 17th and 18th century, death penalty became prevalent as a form of punishment. So these were their main punishment, the death penalty. So gaols or jails, these are partial detention facilities operated by England sheriff. Galleys, these are low, narrow single-deck ships propelled by sails usually rowed by criminals. The ship is used in transportation of criminals in the 16th century. Justification of punishment. Retribution. A justification of punishment where the penalty should be provided by the state whose function is violated to afford the society or the individual the opportunity of imposing upon the suitable punishment as might be enforced. So the offenders should not be punished because of they deserve it. Expiation of or atonement. The punishment in the form of group vengeance where the purpose is to appease the offended group or public. The atonement is the punishment of form of group vengeance where the purpose is to appease the offended group or public. So the deterrence or warning. Justification of punishment where it is give listen to the offenders, showing others what would happen to them if they violate the law. So punishment is imposed to warn potential offenders that they cannot afford the following criminal has done. So the deterrence is what we call the warning, where the offender is showing that to give warning to the offender so what we call they give a warn to the offender to do not doing such wrongdoing to avoid criminal. Incapacitation and protection. The public will be protected if the offender is being held in the conditions. So where he cannot harm others, especially the public, punishment is effected by placing of the offenders in prison so that the society will be insured from further criminal depredation. Reformation or rehabilitation. The establishment of the usefulness and responsibilities of the offender. Society's interests can be better served by helping the prisoners to become law-abiding citizens, productive upon his return to the community, and avoid deviant social behavior. Solitary confinement. The solitary confinement is a form of imprisonment distinguished by living single cells with no meaningful contact with other inmates. Strict measures to control the use of additional security measures and equipment. So the solitary confinement is the practice of isolating people in close 22 to 24 hours. So this were the form of imprisonment where they are only living in a single cells. Religion and correction. Imprisonment under church jurisdiction became a substitute for corporal and capital punishment in medieval times. The Roman Catholic Church developed penal techniques later used by secular states such as monastic cells that serve as punishment place for criminal offenders, and many correctional in which practice in religions in an individual basis or within the structure of an organized religious program. These programs are commonplace in jails and prisons, and research indicates that one in three in which participates in some religious program during their incarceration. Religious as a con game. So the most common belief about why inmates practice religion while impression is that many inmates find religion for manipulative purposes, or what called the con game. It is believed that the inmates uh, hope that prison administrators such as Coron paternity will view the religious practice as an attempt to become a moral, pro-social, and law-abiding citizens. So the result will be earlier parole release. So the purpose of this religious the purpose of this uh, religious is to be earlier. If you attend the about the religions uh, meetings or something, is you will be released earlier or parole release. So they base their impression or impressions of unpersonal experience of witnessing in which you have appropriate to be religious but who have them acted to the contrary or who are repeat visitors to institutions. The reasons for inmate religious involvement. So in many cases, inmates gain direction in remaining for the life from the practice of religion, while in the prison religion also provides hope for the inmates, hope to reform from a life of crime and from a life of imprisonment. Having a peace of mind helps inmates improve their well-being, especially those serving long sentences. And a very important reason why inmates become involved with religion is to improve their own self-concept. And lack of positive self-concept is a common problem with correctional inmates who may suffer from guilt related to failures in life. And the conclusion about the religion is religious persons and religious institutions have been long associated with correctional practices. As correctional facilities become crowded and correctional budgets grow, one in the areas that often suffer from economic cutbacks and rehabilitation program. In this event, even more pressure will be placed on the chaplains and religions and programs to provide added mental health assistance to inmates. As prisons become crowded and job requirements becoming more complex, correctional officers and other staff will surely turn into religious leaders and volunteers to help them deal with the psychological stress of working prison. So that's all my report, and thank you, ma'am.